Act 1, Scene 3 of No Thoroughfare. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alan Chant. No Thoroughfare by Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins. Act 1, Scene 3. The Housekeeper Speaks. On the next day, Mrs. Goldstraw arrived to enter on her domestic duties. Having settled herself in her own room, without troubling the servants and without wasting time, the new housekeeper announced herself as waiting to be favoured with any instructions which her master might wish to give her. The wine merchant received Mrs. Goldstraw in the dining room, in which he had seen her the previous day, and, the usual preliminary civilities having passed on either side, the two sat down to take counsel together on the affairs of the house. "About the meal, sir," said Mrs. Goldstraw. "Have I a large or a small number to provide for?" "If I can carry out a certain old-fashioned plan of mine," replied Mr. Wilding, "you will have a large number of people to provide for. I am a lonely single man, Mrs. Goldstraw, and I hope to live with all the persons in my employment as if they were members of my family. Until that time comes, you will only have me, and the new partner whom I expect immediately, to provide for. What my partner's habits may be I cannot yet say, but I may describe myself as a man of regular hours, with an invariable appetite that you may depend upon to an ounce." "About breakfast, sir?" said Mrs. Goldstraw. "Is there anything particular?" She hesitated, and left the sentence unfinished. Her eyes turned slowly away from her master, and looked towards the chimney-piece. If she had been a less excellent and experienced housekeeper, Mr. Wilding might have fancied that her attention was beginning to wander at the very outset of the interview. "8 o'clock is my breakfast hour," he resumed. "It is one of my virtues to be never tired of broiled bacon, and it is one of my vices to be habitually suspicious of the freshness of eggs." Mrs. Goldstraw looked back at him, still a little divided between her master's chimney-piece and her master. "I take tea," Mr. Wilding went on, "and I am perhaps rather nervous and fidgety about drinking it, within a certain time after it is made. If my tea stands too long—" He hesitated on his side, and left the sentence unfinished. If he had not been engaged in discussing a subject of such paramount interest to himself as his breakfast, Mrs. Goldstraw might have fancied that his attention was beginning to wander at the very outset of the interview. "If your tea stands too long, sir?" said the housekeeper, politely taking up her master's lost thread. "If my tea stands too long," repeated the wine merchant mechanically, his mind getting farther and farther away from his breakfast, and his eyes fixing themselves more and more inquiringly on his housekeeper's face. "If my tea... Dear, dear me, Mrs. Goldstraw, what is the manner and tone of voice that you remind me of? It strikes me even more strongly to-day than it did when I saw you yesterday. What can it be?" "What can it be?" replied Mrs. Goldstraw. She said the words, evidently thinking, while she spoke them, of something else. The wine merchant, still looking at her inquiringly, observed that her eyes wandered towards the chimney-piece once more. They fixed on the portrait of his mother which hung there, and looked at it with that slight contraction of the brow which accompanies a scarcely conscious effort of memory. Mr. Wilding remarked: "My late dear mother, when she was 25." Mrs. Goldstraw thanked him with a movement of the head for being at the pains to explain the picture, and said, with a cleared brow, that it was the portrait of a very beautiful lady. Mr. Wilding, falling back into his former perplexity, tried once more to recover that lost recollection, associated so closely, and yet so undiscoverably, with his new housekeeper's voice and manner. "Excuse my asking you a question which has nothing to do with me or my breakfast," he said. "May I inquire if you have ever occupied any other situation than the situation of housekeeper?" "Oh, yes, sir. I began life as one of the nurses at the Foundling." "Why, that's it!" cried the wine merchant, pushing back his chair. "By Heaven, their manner is the manner you remind me of!" In an astonished look at him, Mrs. Goldstraw changed colour, checked herself, turned her eyes upon the ground, and sat still and silent. "What is the matter?" asked Mr. Wilding. "Do I understand that you were in the Foundling, sir?" "Certainly. I am not ashamed to own it." "Under the name you now bear?" "Under the name of Walter Wilding." "And the lady?" Mrs. Goldstraw stopped short with a look at the portrait, which was now unmistakably a look of alarm. "You mean my mother?" interrupted Mr. Wilding. "Your mother?" repeated the housekeeper, a little constrainedly. "Removed you from the Foundling? At what age, sir?" "At between 11 and 12 years old. It's quite a romantic adventure, Mrs. Goldstraw." He told the story of the lady having spoken to him, while he sat at dinner with the other boys in the Foundling, and of all that had followed, in his innocently communicative way. "My poor mother could never have discovered me," he added, "if she had not met with one of the matrons who pitied her. The matron consented to touch the boy whose name was Walter Wilding, as she went round the dinner tables; and so my mother discovered me again, after having parted from me as an infant at the Foundling doors." At those words, Mrs. Goldstraw's hand, resting on the table, dropped helplessly into her lap. She sat looking at her new master with a face that had turned deadly pale, and with eyes that expressed an unutterable dismay. "What does this mean?" asked the wine merchant. "Stop!" he cried. "Is there something else in the past time which I ought to associate with you? I remember my mother telling me of another person at the Foundling, to whose kindness she owed a debt of gratitude. When she first parted with me as an infant, one of the nurses informed her of the name that had been given to me in the institution. You were that nurse?" "God forgive me, sir. I was that nurse." "God forgive you?" "We had better get back, sir, if I may make so bold as to say so, to my duties in the house," said Mrs. Goldstraw. "Your breakfast hour is 8. Do you lunch or dine in the middle of the day?" The excessive pinkness which Mr. Bintrey had noticed in his client's face began to appear there once more. Mr. Wilding put his hand to his head, and mastered some momentary confusion in that quarter, before he spoke again. "Mrs. Goldstraw," he said, "you are concealing something from me." The housekeeper obstinately repeated, "Please to favour me, sir, by saying whether you lunch or dine in the middle of the day." "I don't know what I do in the middle of the day. I can't enter into my household affairs, Mrs. Goldstraw, till I know why you regret an act of kindness to my mother, which she always spoke of gratefully to the end of her life. You are not doing me a service by your silence. You are agitating me. You are alarming me. You are bringing on the singing in my head." His hand went up to his head again, and the pink in his face deepened by a shade or two. "It's hard, sir, on just entering your service," said the housekeeper, "to say what may cost me the loss of your goodwill. Please to remember, end how it may, that I only speak because you have insisted on my speaking, and because I see that I am alarming you by my silence. When I told the poor lady, whose portrait you have got there, the name by which her infant was christened in the Foundling, I allowed myself to forget my duty, and dreadful consequences, I am afraid, have followed from it. I'll tell you the truth as plainly as I can. A few months from the time when I had informed the lady of her baby's name, There came to our institution in the country another lady, a stranger, whose object was to adopt one of our children.